And hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life in all the ways that you think we mean building a better life, we do mean. And I mean, as always, myself, JDK Wyneken, and my co-host, my friend, my colleague, my collaborator, my co-producer, so many things she and I get to do together. Ashley Knebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
How are you?
I am very well.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Glad to hear it. Middle of the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to meet in the middle of the week.
It's always in the middle of the week when we meet.
I know that's what I'm saying. It's always good to meet in the middle of the week because we have enough to talk about and then we have enough to look forward to.
Oh,
right.
Look
With the
at
weekend.
you.
See,
wow.
It's all philosophical right out of the gate.
My.
So, all right.
Already.
All right. Well, good to see you, of course,
thanks.
as always. And thank you to all of our listeners and viewers in case you are watching on our YouTube channel. Remember that if you miss any of this episode or any of our other episodes, you can catch us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also see previous episodes, about 4 or 5 back at this point, on our YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. Also, we do live stream on our Instagram feed as well. And if you're wondering how to find that, go to the show notes wherever you get your podcasts, and you will find all the links to the ways you can communicate with Ashley and myself. Our social media links, our email, stayingpowershow@gmail.com, links to our Patreon site to support our larger work, and there is more to come, and we'll be announcing more about those things in the days ahead. Always building, aren't we, Ashley?
Yeah, we are.
We always are. All right. Okay. All right. So sometimes, if you're a longtime listener of this show, you know sometimes we come in and we're all set to talk about something very specific. Other times, one of us comes in and surprises the other with a topic that we're going to talk about. Today's one of those days where we know exactly what we're going to talk about. So, and we're going to do something a little different today. Even though it's going to be a conversation, it's going to be coming from a little bit of a different place because we're going to let all of you listeners in on kind of an interesting event that happened between Ashley and myself the other day. So, Ashley, how would you describe what we're talking about
That's a
today?
good question. I literally was thinking about that as you were saying that because it was not an argument. It was, I would say, probably in the amount of time I've known you, like our first deemed uncomfortable conversation.
Not a difficult conversation.
No, it was not difficult. It could have been difficult.
Could have been.
But we both did our part and made it just uncomfortable.
So that's a win.
Sure. That's a win. But it was just a subject and we both were kind of like emotionally fueled on both sides about it. And it could have escalated into an argument and whatnot. But we both, because we're coaches and we have grounding and we have these things that we, share with our clients, but also practice ourselves. But we both were very mature and responsible for our own side of it.
In the end, for sure.
In the end. And it went really well.
It did.
It was still uncomfortable, but it wasn't bad and it wasn't an argument. It was great.
It was. And
look,
it turns
we're
out
still talking to each other.
We're still talking to each other. And in fact, it actually strengthened all the things that are already strong about our partnership in the first place, which was even better. Right. And it's something, what's interesting about it to me is, it was actually spread out quite a bit. I mean, it was 2 conversations actually.
True.
Right. It was 2 conversations. One initially where the problems that
if we're going to preface, should we just get into it?
We should just get into it. Let's just get into it. Okay. Yeah. Cut me off now before I waste some other minutes. All right. So, do you want me to set this or do you want me to? Okay.
Go ahead.
So, as we've talked about many times on the show, Ashley and I are continually looking to grow not only this show, but the Staying Power network of shows. So we've gotten into the producing game and we're doing a lot of that. And there's a learning curve in that for both of us. And we're making our way. Sometimes it's not going as quickly as we'd like. Other times we're sort of okay with it, right? We kind of roll with it. And I think where this all started was there's trying to figure out who's doing what,
Yeah.
how that's going. We both have busy lives. We both have other employment that we're a part of. So this is all in addition to the things that we're doing. And I think a number of different things came together, I think, to create, for at least in me, some fears that we were getting bogged down, that things were getting slowed down, or things were feeling uneven. It's the type of thing when you're as busy as the two of us tend to be, right? There's always great intentions to get things done. And sometimes they just don't get done when they're kind of in addition to everything else. And you cannot predict what's going to happen in your work life. You can't necessarily predict what's going to happen in your home life. Life happens. And I would say 99.999% of the time, you and I always understand that. Right. So this was one of those 0.0001 times where, yeah. And so for whatever reason, and this is where this starts.
What's your side?
I got hung up. I was feeling like a number of things were on my plate that I just simply could not get through. Could not get through. Right. And it was kicking up a whole lot of stuff. Now, in retrospect, I know a couple other things about myself that day. I was tired. Okay. I've been stressed out, as we talked about. And I think there was just a lot of new things happening for me. And sometimes when I have a lot of new things going on, if I'm holding myself to this story that I should be doing it better than I am, I can increase the stress on myself. And when the stress increases on myself, I can get more intensity with energy. And so when Ashley was not able to do something that I had hoped that she'd be able to do, it just hit me sideways, right? It hit me sideways. And I knew right away, for all listeners, I knew right away that I was probably overheated on something, like that this wasn't specifically about what I was making out more of it than just the issue at hand. There was something more to it. And I wasn't quite sure what that was about, but I know, as we've talked about many times on this show, that my connected relationships, I have to share what I'm feeling, even if I don't really know what's happening, or I don't know the cause, or I don't know the solution. And so, Ashley, you picked up, though, in retrospect, we've done some looking back, you picked up that I wasn't happy.
Oh, yeah. It was really obvious. And maybe it's obvious just because, one, I'm intuitive to your verbiage and your tonality and whatnot, and I just know you well enough.
It was over text.
I know, I could still read it.
I know.
Girls have that intuition.
Yes, they do.
We're good. I know. Good for me.
Yes,
So you were right. From my perspective, we've had a lot going on, like he said, and we've had a lot of responsibilities that we're in the midst of with growing this network and whatnot, of divvying it up. It's gotten to the point now where we're like, okay, we need to actually solidify, what are you doing? What am I doing? So we know our roles, and we know we can always count on who's doing what. So we know it's done, or we know what we're responsible for. And we're in the midst of doing that. And I knew sometimes with JD's schedule, he has a little bit more fluidity with it than I do with my schedule. So
True.
In the short run, a lot more was put on your plate. And now that it's grown so much, I'm like, okay, I really need to take some responsibility of taking some of that off your plate and just rearranging my schedule so I can take on some of the load and do my portion. And I had been saying like, yep, I want to do this and I want to take this on, and so on and so forth. And we were supposed to get together, and life happened. And I was unfortunately not able to get together. And this was like my bad. I should have reached out to you and let you know ahead of time. I got very preoccupied with said thing that interrupted my day and did not reach out to you. And then you had to reach out to me, and I ended up just being like, yep, sorry, I can't do it. And it caused a whole thing. And in your text response, it was very clear to me that I upset you. And I was like, all right, fair. And I'm like, all right.
How did you know? Because I didn't yell at you.
No,
I didn't.
Like you said, it was over text.
It was over text. So how did you know?
I think it was either one, I already felt like you were probably frustrated, or you were going to be feeling some sort of way
Mhm.
about the fact that I last minute bailed on you and didn't really give you much of a notice besides the last minute after your own inquiring.
Mhm. Right.
And, your text was really brief. Your responses were pretty clipped compared to how you normally are. So
Verbose.
I was like, yeah, he's very wordy. Uh, shocker.
I'm very
So
flowery in my language.
so I was like, okay, clearly he is unhappy and that's okay because I don't blame you for that. I would be if I was in your shoes. And so we determined like what time later we were going to be actually talking this out. I was like, okay, at this time, like I can talk and we can, hash things out, whatnot. And you were like very short. And I'm like, you know what? I don't feel right leaving him in whatever state he's in right now because he probably already feels like I just gave him the shaft and he's not important. I'm like, I don't want him feeling that way because he is important.
Mhm.
And I do want to respect him and his time and whatnot. So I quickly called him. It's like, hey, um,
Which was brave.
eh, thanks.
It was brave. It was
I mean,
brave.
because I felt bad and I'm like, I'm not just gonna let him sit like this. And I really didn't have to say much because I think I said like one line and then I just shut my mouth. And for probably a solid like 12 minutes, JD just talked about
Where I was at.
his position and his perspective and where he was at and kind of what he was feeling and whatnot. And then I held my boundary and I'm like, appreciate you sharing me all what you were sharing, what you just did. We're gonna reconvene with this at the time that I said.
Right.
That
Which was a
worked for
couple
me.
hours later.
It was gonna be, yeah,
Yeah,
roughly 2
couple
hours
hours
later.
later.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, it was very short. I don't think I cut in once when you were talking. I was
No.
just dead silent because I'm like, I'm just gonna give him the entire microphone.
The only sounds you made were to acknowledge that you were still on the line.
But I'm like, because I'm like, one, if I really don't have the time to get into it, there's
Yes.
no point in getting into
Right.
it. So
There
I'm
is
like,
none.
I'm just gonna
Mhm.
let him say his piece.
Mhm.
And that might help him feel a little bit better because he's gotten some of it out. It's gonna give me a little bit of insight. So when I can actually have this full conversation at the time I'm available, that's when we're gonna do it.
Okay, so that's a really good description. So, and I said to you just a minute ago that it was brave for you to call when you did. Now, not because I was gonna explode, but you were leaning into something that I think, because I think I knew you knew I was not happy.
Mhm.
And 100% chances are there's subconsciously, I wanted you to know I wasn't happy, right? So that clip thing is happening for a reason,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Of course she's gonna know that because I'm not normally the way I am. Now,
Mhm.
when you called though, and I said that was brave, it put me in a position to have to make a choice. I just pulled into a parking space. I was gonna go sit at a coffee shop for a couple hours. And I saw your call come in and I went, okay, she's wanting to lean into this. And so I had a choice right there. I could either not answer or I could show up the way you were showing me by calling.
Mhm.
Be like, okay, let's lean into this, even though it's not the scheduled time. So I had some awareness that it was probably only going to be a short amount of time. And what you said when I got on the phone, when I answered, you said, okay, can you give me the gist of where you're at? Right. So I already knew it was going to be a short
Give
amount
me
of
the
time.
cliff notes.
Yeah. So, and so I did. And there's going to be a lot to unpack in there too, because
Mhm.
I knew that you were calling to sort this out or at least begin the process.
Mhm.
And I was also feeling a lot of emotion. And so it put me into a spot where I had to say, okay, I can share all this, but this is the person who I do this with, right? We have bigger things going on, and we do not have this type of misunderstanding very often, or this type of situation happen very often with us.
Mm.
So I recognized it the moment for what it was. I was like, this is kind of a big deal, right? To lean into this.
Sure.
So I did share that, but I did the best I could to stay in the spot where I was sharing what I was feeling, the stories that were coming up, right? The concerns that I had, but also curiosity. Hopefully, because I knew there was going to be things I hadn't thought about with what was
Mhm.
going on with you, right? That kind of thing. And so I wanted to stay open to that. And so I wasn't interested in an argument by any stretch of the imagination. I just had a lot of concerns. And granted, a lot of things got stirred up in that moment, right? And I knew even as we started talking that this was a cumulative result of the buildup of all the kind of the tensions and the newness of everything and the increasing responsibilities. All of that was getting to me, and I knew it in the moment. But you being on the other end, so calm, so clear, and just saying gave me the floor,
Mhm.
helped me not kind of explode, even though I never felt like I was on the verge of exploding in anger. I never felt that. But I wanted to explain it well.
Mhm.
And I also wanted to do it in such a way that I wasn't telling you what your reality is.
Mhm.
You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. Because I hate it when people do that to me. It's my number one thing
Mhm.
is if somebody's telling me what my reality is and I know the reality is different, I don't like that. Right.
Oh,
So I don't
interesting.
want to do that to other people. So
Sure.
anyway, so I did that. And then you said, okay, we need to talk about this a little later as scheduled. Part of me didn't like that because I wanted to fix it. You know, you and I are
Yeah.
both fixers.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're both fixers.
Mhm.
And so on one hand, I didn't like that. Second part of that though was I knew it was the right call. I was like, okay, we have this out in the open. We need a little bit of time to let this breathe.
Mhm.
I wanted you to have time to think about it, you know, to respond to it effectively because I knew once we did, we'd probably avoid the pitfalls that can sometimes happen in conversations like that when you don't take a break. But what I loved about it is that we bookended it. Okay, we're going to talk about this again at such and such time as planned. And that, I mean, so it set the stage pretty good for a
It
good
did.
conversation.
And then just before break, I did send a text afterwards.
You did, which
I
mattered.
did. Should I say it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was just because I felt like I also didn't want you to feel like, okay, dump your stuff and I'm just gonna leave. We're just gonna leave it sitting there in the open for a couple of hours and make you feel vulnerable in this state. I'm like, that also doesn't feel really good. I'm like, I
Mm.
literally don't have the ability to do this
Yeah,
entire
you
conversation
literally
right
didn't
now.
have the time.
I
Yeah.
didn't. So I sent a follow-up text after we hung up and we decided, okay, we're gonna talk at this time. I sent a follow-up and it was just brief of like, I understand this is really important to you. This matters to you and it matters to me too. And I really do want to give you the opportunity to, I don't remember exactly what I said, but give you the opportunity to talk this
Yeah.
through.
And it's very close to you. It's clearly hit on something. You're
Yes.
clearly having a lot of
Yeah.
feeling about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just wanted to let him know that I acknowledge and I see that and it's not going overlooked.
Yeah. Yeah, and that helped a lot. And I think I replied really quickly again. Like, I understand.
It was still a short
It was
response.
still a
but it
short
was okay.
response. Okay. So, but in retrospect, that was actually the best possible setup for the conversation that was to come.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that on the other end of our first break. Come on back here on Staying Power. Ashley and I are having a conversation, sort of the anatomy of an uncomfortable conversation that she and I had just recently. So, see you in just a minute.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
I just got a text asking me to approve a bank transfer I didn't make. I bet you get messages like this too. So much of our lives are online today, from email to banking and everything in between. To make sure my information was protected, I checked out CISA's Secure Our World website for simple steps to stay safe online. Now I know how to protect myself from scammers, and you can learn too. Go to CISA at cisa.gov/Secure Our World.
Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are talking about an uncomfortable conversation that Ashley and I had over the weekend, having to do with just a lot of the new things that we're working on with the show and with the larger Staying Power network. And there were a lot of feelings that were coming up because of how our schedules weren't jibing. And so we talked before the break about the lead into that. And we'll continue with that in just a minute. However, before we do that and continue to tell the story, let's take a quick break and do our weekly segment where Ashley and I take 2 minutes and talk about something that either was a triumph from the week or a terror from the week, all in the name of sort of putting out the vulnerabilities and all the successes that we have every single week. This week, it is 2 minutes of triumph. Here we go.
Yes.
All right. I love that one. Ashley, you are first.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yay. I am feeling very triumphant because I'm finally going on a vacation.
Yeah.
2 vacations, actually. You know what? I mean, if you're going to do it well.
Right. Double it up.
That's right. But my first one, I'm very excited. I have not been down to Disneyland in a bit. I am going down there, but I'm more excited because I'm also going to Universal Studio, which happens to have Harry Potter World in it.
Here
That's
it is.
really like that, and the churros from Disneyland is like literally what I'm looking for.
They have the best.
to.
They have the best churros on the planet. I mean, and I've had churros in some really good places. I've had
Just
churros from Olvera
Can't
Street in LA.
wait to eat them.
I know they're so
But,
good. They serve them
yes.
with different dips now.
No,
chocolate,
I don't need
caramel, all
dips.
this
No,
kind of
don't
stuff.
ruin the
Oh, you just
original.
like-
I
you're a
just want
purist?
that.
You're a churro purist.
Yes, I'm a churro purist.
All right, I hear you. I hear you.
But then I'm gonna go to Harry Potter World, and I'm
know.
gonna wear my little Slytherin costume that I wore for Halloween last year. Very excited.
All right.
So
You know what I'm
grateful
excited
for it.
about? Is
All
whatever,
the pictures you're gonna see.
and whatever knickknack you bring me back, it's gonna be fun. Like a deck of cards or something. It's gonna be great. Yeah,
wow.
I just totally pitched myself for a gift. Thank you. I'll let everybody know what I do or don't get.
Oh, okay. Side dish of sarcasm.
Well, that's good though, because you haven't taken a vacation in a long time.
No, it's been a few years.
Wow. Feels good.
Can't wait.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
All right. That's coming up quick.
I know.
So that's exciting.
All
Okay.
right, what do you got?
All right. Mine is I have discovered the joys of getting up early.
What?
Uh-huh.
Like how early?
5:30.
Oh my goodness.
Uh-huh. I have.
You've met a whole new world of people.
It's really true, actually. And it's funny because I've known that, I've never been a morning, quote unquote, morning person. I've always liked to stay up late at night.
Mhm.
But for a really long time, when I would have to get up early in the morning, whether it was like to catch an early flight at the airport or to do something else, once I'm up and moving, I feel like I'm ahead of everybody because
Mhm.
literally I am.
Mhm.
Right. And so because of some changes I've been making in my schedule work-wise, I really needed to start getting up earlier to get stuff done. So I started, and Ashley, I love it.
Yay.
I love it.
I'm excited for you.
And there's actually study after study that shows if you can do that, but particularly if you're getting good sleep the night before,
Mhm.
you actually set your body up and your mind to do so much more and to feel better throughout the day. And I've only been doing it for a few days, so I have a little ways to go, but I really am enjoying it a lot. To me, that is a triumph. I feel
Good.
more like a grown up than a college
You
student.
arrived.
Yeah, it's exciting. So anyway, that's
Good.
my my
Oh.
triumph for the week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And welcome.
I know. It's like a club. Is there a secret handshake or anything like that?
No, but there has always been like a joke and whatnot about the 5 a.m. club.
The 5 a.m. club?
Yeah.
Okay. The big test is going to come tomorrow when my schedule is more open and I'm still planning to get up earlier. And I'm going to go to the
Mm.
gym in the morning.
You should post on your social media.
I
that you're
should. The
there, so we
accountability.
all know.
I will.
Okay.
That's great accountability. Great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to this uncomfortable conversation that Ashley and I were having. And the reason why we're taking you through this, listeners, is because we talk about this kind of stuff on this show all the time, right? And as coaches, we talk with our clients all the time. We wanted everybody to see that this is something that we need to do too, right?
Oh,
This
yeah.
this happens in our own lives, and this just happened to be something between the two of us. And we thought we would just share it with everybody so we could see because it did turn out pretty well. And we were,
Mhm.
by the end of this, we were pretty proud of ourselves. I think it's fair to say.
Well, I mean, like coaches are humans too.
we are.
And so it's like, how did two coaches have an uncomfortable conversation?
Conversation. Well, and one of the things that you learn too is that it's really tough to coach from a position that you aren't in yourself.
That's very
You
true.
really can't, right? You
Mhm.
have to be able to do that. So,
Mhm.
all right. So where we left off with this was we'd laid out the problem, or I had laid out how I was feeling about something. Ashley had only had so much time for the initial part of this, knowing that I was the one with the energy on it. She had picked up on that, had leaned into that, gave me a chance to give the short version, and then immediately said, okay, I can't do anything about this now, but in a couple of hours when we're scheduled to talk, we'll talk about it then.
Mhm.
And which I was half okay with because I knew that was probably important. The side of me that always wants to fix things didn't like that as much. So it felt like hitting on the brakes, grinding the gears, whatever. But it was the right thing. And then Ashley followed up with a text right behind it saying, hey, I did that because I know this is important and we need more time to talk about it. And I want to think about it a little bit so that I can show up at my best.
Mhm.
That was, once I was able, and of course I just shared a whole lot. So my energy was even higher.
Mhm.
I was glad I'd said something. I'm glad I articulated what was happening. And then we had a 2-hour gap.
Mhm.
What were those 2 hours like for you?
I mean, I would think like the first hour was a little bit like distracted just because I
What
was
you
in
were
the middle
working
of
on,
doing something,
right.
yes. But then like when I was wrapping up with that and then had a little bit of time to get to a place where I could then talk to you uninterrupted and whatnot, I will be honest, and I think this is just human nature. I was going through all these scenarios in my head and otherwise known as stories that I was like, this is not my problem. This is JD's problem. And I'm like, Ashley, that's not right. And then I'm like, yeah, but he should be doing this. It's like, but is this really true? Is this
Mm,
something you're making up? Maybe he doesn't have the opportunity to do this. Maybe there's other things going on in his life that you don't know about right now. And it was
mm.
just funny to me how
The idea that maybe I had more time to do some of
it
these
just
things.
different
Different.
scenarios,
Got it.
things were
Got it.
coming up, and just as examples. But there were multiple things that were coming up that always placed me as like the victim and you were the one with the problem. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And I'm like, this is funny how this is just the first natural thing to come up. And so
Mm,
I laid those to rest. And then I started giving it some more open thought of like, all right, well, his feelings were valid because you know what you did wasn't awesome. You could have owned your side a little bit better or taken some preemptive action. You never would have been here if you would have done that. And because you didn't, now this is the situation. And now I need to take responsibility for my half of the situation.
mhm.
So by the time we talked, I had already worked through, I guess what you would say, like the emotional fireworks that were just blowing off
Mhm.
left and right and
Right, because
going off that
I put out a lot out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like so I had my response to that, but I didn't wanna say anything, I didn't wanna share, I wanted to just sit and kind of, like, let them shuffle through my mind and be like, "Yep, I agree with that. Nope, that's a story. Nope, that's not true." And then once we actually talked, I had worked through all of them so much that I was very low responsive, I felt like. Like,
Mhm.
there wasn't, like, high emotions running.
No, your energy
All of
was
it
not
was
high.
just it was really calm, and I'm like, "Alright,
Mhm.
let's just handle this with the facts and listen to what you've got, if there was more that came up for you or whatnot, and let's just work to a resolution."
Mhm. Okay, so that was your 2 hours.
Mhm.
My 2 hours, I went right from where I'd been sitting in the car. It was pouring rain, so I'd gone from the pouring rain into the coffee shop. I ordered myself a cup of coffee, sat down, was like, "Okay, I can get a few things done between now and then," and it was mainly, like, housekeeping stuff, like, stuff I needed to get done, but stuff that was kind of low on the energy investment in my head
Mhm.
because I wanted that time because I mean, like I said, I had just shared all that, so I put all that out there, and it was kind of a vulnerable spot. I had no idea what you were thinking, had no idea how you were feeling other than this text you said, but that's what I was able to keep coming back to when the story started popping up for me. Is she gonna be when we talk, is she gonna be mad? Is she going to say, "JD, this is all on you," or "This don't make this about me," or, "Were we gonna have an argument?" Right? I was like, "Are we gonna
Mhm.
fight about this?" Right? I don't want to. I doubt she wants to, but is that what's gonna happen? But coming back to that text, I was like, "No, she's got the best of intentions in this." And what happened was that energy went down, right? Kind of I got used to the fact all that stuff had happened, all had been said. As the energy went down, took some deep breaths, right? Looked around, and then as I was calming down, I was able to go, "Who am I talking about here? How much credit do I have in the bank with this person?" We have worked through almost without fail. I think actually without fail, anything that's come up that we've needed to work on or work out or adjust. We've always done that.
Mm-hmm.
We've shared a lot with each other about our lives, about the challenges we have, about the goals that we have. We've done that enough to invest in this project together of this show and all these other things we're working on. And so I said to myself, okay, hold on. If I'm going to take this one thing and that is going to drain this joint bank account that we've been investing in one shot, that's going to be on me. So what I need to do is when this conversation happens again, I need to just let her say what she wants to say. And anything where I made the determination, I'm going to come in with curiosity. I've said what I've needed to say because I asked myself, did you say everything you needed to say? And I thought I had. And so then it would be about, okay, just the curiosity to be open because chances are when Ashley explains some things, you're going to hear some things you hadn't considered or maybe you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And are there some things going on with you that she doesn't know that might be helpful?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, so by the time we got to talk again, I drove to another place to sit in my car. And so when you called and I answered, I was also lower energy because I was like, I really want us to get this sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
So Ashley called and it was a 90-minute conversation, almost on the
Was
nose.
the whole thing centered around this though?
It was not. We went
Okay.
we went to some other places, right? We talked about some other things too, which was fine. But I would say probably at least half
Yeah,
to 2/3,
Yep.
maybe.
I would say that.
Okay. And so when Ashley called, I want to tell everybody what you did because I thought this was amazing.
What I do?
When you called and I answered, you asked how I was doing. I said, I'm all right. The first thing you said was, okay, I heard everything you said. Is there anything else that has come up in the last couple hours that you want to make sure you add in so I've got the full story? And I went, oh, wow, she was really listening. That's amazing. And I said, no, I think I've covered all that. And then you stepped in and told me what you thought. I'll let you pick that up.
Oh, thanks. Well, thank you. I'm
Oh, it was great.
glad that
It's great.
landed well. Just because I'm like, well, if I worked through a bunch of stuff in the last couple hours, I would imagine he probably did too.
Mm.
And I really wanted to make sure that I saw the full picture from your perspective and to understand it as best as I could before I just then say my half of it, right?
Mhm.
And some of the things that I was questioning was correct. There were things going on in your life that I did not know, which
Mhm.
is fine. But they answered something that I was like, well, does he have the time to do this? Does he not? And for lack of better terms, is he just using his time poorly and he could manage it better and then this wouldn't be on my plate? Like those type of things. Yeah, honest. That's
Those are
kind of the
legitimate
things that would come
questions.
up. And
Those are
so I'm
legitimate
like,
questions.
instead of going at with an attack of like, well, you have more free time than I do. I'm like, does he? You don't know what he does all day, every day. Like,
Curiosity.
why don't you just ask
Yeah.
and be kind in how you phrase your asking also? So I did. And turns out there was a few things happening in your days that I was not aware of that affected how much you could have on your plate
Mhm.
and vice versa for me.
Yeah.
I had gone through a couple of things in the last few weeks that was just put a lot more on my plate
Mhm.
that
Elsewhere.
yes,
Yeah.
elsewhere. That was a lot. And I was trying to work through all them and catch up with that and do this stuff. And I kind of triple booked myself and then had some things come up that needed my attention right away. And that's why I couldn't meet up with JD.
Mhm.
And when I explained those, he was like, you know what? You had told me that once, but I had forgotten. And this
Yep.
totally makes sense.
Yep.
This makes sense now.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of funny hearing like the little light bulbs going off for both of us that were like, oh,
Yeah.
so you weren't just
Oh.
trying to be a jerk and just put it all on my plate. Like there was legitimate reason on both sides.
There was.
And then once like we've said before, uh, it's better to have a discussion and end it being on the same side against what you're working
Mhm.
on, like to be teammates sitting next to each other instead of
Exactly.
across from each other.
Mhm.
That's how I felt like we ended.
Yep.
When we got to the end of the conversation, we came to a resolution and whatnot. I'm like, oh yeah, we're both actually in the same boat, dealing kind of with the same stuff.
Same stuff.
And so I'm like, oh, okay.
Same stuff. Yep.
And what I tried to do is kind of, I wanted to affirm everything that you had told me on the phone and the first time and then the second time, and make sure that I understood what you were saying
Mhm.
and kind of like reaffirm it and repeat it back to you and just
Mhm.
let you know, like, I hear this and I see this and I'm understanding this. I totally understand why you're frustrated. I'd be feeling the same way if I was in your
Mhm.
shoes, so that way we found common ground.
And I felt heard immediately.
Good.
I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
she got it. She understands it." And then you'd said that right from the very beginning. Before you started asking questions about what was going on with me and sharing what was going on with you,
Mhm.
you made sure you had all the information. And then you acknowledged that you understood it, where it came from. So I felt seen, felt heard. And then suddenly what that did for me is it cleared the field,
Hmm.
because it said, "Okay, that is not there anymore. Okay, so that's been heard. So all the energy from that can go away. Now I can just focus on what she's bringing in and what she's asking." And now, because I was open to the fact, and I kind of knew my response for the moment itself was bigger than just the moment.
Mhm.
And so I had obviously let things build up, right? Without sharing prior to that, right? I had let things build up. So I knew there was that energy, and I felt the opportunity, because you had cleared the field, as it were, to kind of let that drop, and was a lot more receptive to your questions. And that's when you said, "Okay, well, what's
Hmm.
going on with you?" And I shared what was going on. And you went, "Oh gosh, no wonder you don't have time for
Mhm.
that." And then as you shared yours,
Mhm.
there were things I didn't know. And then there was that one thing that I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that whole thing. You told me that a couple weeks ago. I forgot you were still in the middle of that." And when that happened, it was like, I remember feeling, I was sitting in the driver's seat of my car, and I was, my shoulders were I was sitting up really straight. And I remember when I heard that, my whole body just relaxed. I
Mm.
went, "Oh, okay," because I'd forgotten something. Just as I had kind of thought ever since you had first said, "I can't meet today." I'm like, "Okay, my reaction is bigger than this moment warrants." And
Mhm.
yet I still need to share this and say, "This is how I'm feeling." But I had tried in that first conversation to make clear that I didn't necessarily know what was really happening,
Mhm.
but this was my side of the street. This is what I'm feeling. These are the stories I've made up. I think these are some of the concerns that I've got. And I even identified a few of them in kind of older stories.
Yes, you did.
Right. And so all of a sudden, we were having an investigative conversation based in curiosity, listening to the other. And I remember when you started sharing about what was going on with you, after I'd shared about what was going on with me, everything just settled back into place. Right. And before I knew it, in a very short period of time, all the energy about this whole subject had just gone, had run its course, had left the room. And instead, I'm having a conversation with my friend about some difficult things going on, the challenges that we've had, but a reaffirmation that we are still on the same page with all the things we're doing with this show and with everything else. Very reaffirming. And of course, as happens, and we tell our clients this all the time, as you talk things out, or as we talk things out, realizations came to both of us
Mhm.
about things like, "Oh, I didn't realize until just now that this is the story that's coming up for me. And it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with this other thing."
Mhm.
That was pretty great in that sense. Okay. So Ashley, when did you actually, we should take a break,
Mhm.
shouldn't we? We should. Look at that. Finished perfectly. All right. Okay. I was doing the math in my head. All right. So when we come back from the break, Ashley and I will finish up this element of the story and then kind of go back a little bit and talk about what we think were the key pieces of this conversation to the reason why it went so well. And hopefully some things that maybe you can try out in your own uncomfortable conversations, because they're coming. We'll see you in a minute.
Don't ask me to talk.
There's a lot of talk out there.
political talk, sports talk, girl talk, trash talk, and so on. But there's only one, Don't Ask Me to Talk, helmed by conversational off-roaders and podcast pals Eric Ryder and Stacey Heller. They follow every tangent they encounter, from cultural blind spots to their infamous weekly Wheelo topics. Listen wherever you listen to your fave podcasts. Subscribe and share too. Or tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KKNW.
If you're 19 or older with certain underlying medical conditions such as asthma or diabetes, you can get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia, a potentially serious bacterial lung disease that can disrupt your life for weeks. If you're 65 or older, it is also recommended you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia, no matter the season. Talk to your doctor about vaccination today and learn more at lung.org/protect yourself. A message from the American Lung Association in collaboration with Pfizer.
Multicultural, multidimensional even. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And went a little long there on the last segment. And Ashley was kind of giving me a look that I couldn't quite understand. So Ashley, if I do that again, just reach over and flick me on the head.
Honestly,
It's
I would
time.
say if you guys could ever just watch the live stream or go back and actually watch the YouTube videos, it's very entertaining
It is.
what happens off the mic,
Yeah.
but still on camera.
Because every look on Ashley's face tells you exactly what she's thinking at any given moment. It's great. So, and in those moments, she was thinking, we're past the break, dude. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So we're back. All right. So as we finish up this episode and talk about this uncomfortable conversation that Ashley and I successfully navigated, it was probably the biggest one of those that we've had.
I think it's the
I think
only
it might be the only one we've had. Yeah, that's like that. And it worked out really successfully. And to the point that's in the conversations we've had since then, we're actually in many ways glad it happened.
Mhm.
Right. All right. So with this, and as I mentioned before the break, for me, the energy was gone. And as we started connecting, I realized, okay, nope, these are all the realities. The reality is our bank account is still very full. This is a momentary thing, and we're just reorganizing. There was no repair to be done. It was just clarifying, getting back on the same page. When did you know that we were sort of past that point of real discomfort and kind of back in the groove? When did you notice that?
You know, I noticed it when you started talking more. Actually. Just saying. Because when he was really short with his text, I'm like, he is really not okay, because that is not, as you all know, this is not JD. But aside from that, to be honest, like after you had said your piece and then when I had said mine, your response was very kind. And I felt like even in other things when you were talking about it, you were giving benefit of doubt. And you allowed room of being like, I know I'm missing something here. And if you can put in those puzzle pieces for me, this might just fix itself, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not like one of us really wronged the other or did something terrible.
No.
Right?
No.
It wasn't
that kind of
right. I mean, there was some insensitivity on my side and a little bit of disrespect for your time on my side. But it wasn't like we did something really hurtful or harmful to each other.
And it wasn't intentional.
You're right. And it wasn't intentional. And then it just, beyond that, the deeper issue was more of like just misunderstanding on both sides about the same exact thing.
Yeah. And we both had some anxieties and some deep challenges going on in other areas of our life that I think we both said, it's really good for us to know this about the other, that this is going on. That was really important for us both to understand. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was after that, and I started to feel much better when I had said my portion of what was going on with me, that you accepted it really well, because a lot of times you're in a difficult conversation or an uncomfortable one or an argument, and part of the frustration is the other person is not hearing you, not seeing you. And that's why people yell, they raise their voice, because they're just trying to say, like, you're not hearing me. You're not either accepting what I'm saying. You're not taking a moment to see it from my side. My point in my perspective is not landing over there. It just keeps bouncing off whatever wall that you
And you're
have
not even
put up.
trying
And
to.
yes,
Yeah.
and you don't seem to care.
Mhm.
That's the worst thing. And so it was really great to know that you're like, while I misunderstand, I care.
Mhm.
And that was the overarching theme, is like, I still care. I care a great deal. And that's why I want to figure out what's going on and
Mhm.
move on from this. And we did. And it was great. And that's why the conversation was so long, because then we moved past it and then we
Moved on
got
to other
talking about
things.
other things.
Other things.
And it
Yeah.
was fine. And it's been fine since then.
Yeah. No, it's been really good. And I think I remember getting off the phone with you, and we had other stuff that we had to do that day. And I texted you that night. I said, you know what? I'm feeling pretty proud of us,
Mhm.
that we did it that way. And so I've been thinking a lot. And one reason why we ended up deciding to do this as today's topic was because we kind of went back and said, okay, well, what is the anatomy of navigating a uncomfortable conversation successfully?
Mhm.
As you rightfully mentioned just a second ago, every conversation is different. If somebody has done something wrong, if a boundary has been crossed, that's a whole different thing. There's every single type of conversation like that there's an art to it and how to navigate them successfully. In this case, this was, like you said, misunderstanding, kind of gaps in knowledge that we didn't realize that we had that would be helpful. And also a shared understanding that this endeavor that we're on together remains important. So there was a lot of reaffirmation in there.
Mhm.
So I think for the last part of the show here, talking a little bit about what we think those successful pieces were
Mhm.
might be really good for anybody listening
Sure.
who, just to kind of be aware of. So
Mhm.
let's just kind of throw them out there from wherever they happened in the conversation. We don't have to go back to the beginning
Sure.
and work our way through. What are some key ingredients to this?
First one that comes to mind is truly acknowledging what the other person is feeling and what
Mhm.
they're saying was their reality
Mhm.
of the situation.
Mhm.
Instead of, like you said earlier, telling them what their reality is, listening and acknowledging what they were going through, what it looked like from their perspectives,
Mhm.
and saying, like, I see what you mean by that. I totally understand that you are frustrated with this right now. Like, allowing that person to know that you're not just like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but actually being like, "No, actually, I'm gonna take a moment, really think about this, because while I'm sitting over here in my chair, you're sitting over there in your chair feeling something entirely different than what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And I somehow need to bridge that gap.
Mhm.
And by me extending first will help bridge that gap."
Yeah, that's a really good one, because what can often happen is an uncomfortable conversation, argument can quickly turn into prosecution versus defense.
Mhm.
One side is making an accusation, the other person is having to defend, or one of them thinks that's what it is,
Mhm.
right? And that's not how successful conversations usually happen, is because if somebody's immediately on the defensive, and that's what I didn't want to have happen with you in the front end, because as bothered as I was like, look, I know who this person is. This is Ashley. She does not intend ever to do things like this that cause me problems. So whatever's
Mhm.
happening, she's probably not aware.
Mhm.
So this doesn't need to be a persecution or a prosecution. Um, for me, what the image that comes to mind is you've got two people who say, "This is the challenge. Here's what's happening with me." The other person says, "I hear that. Here's what's happening with me." And you take a look and you see what you have in common, and then you see what pieces you didn't anticipate being there, and then you talk about those. And that
Mhm.
takes you from, like you said, that face-to-face, head-to-head confrontation, the prosecution versus defense,
Mhm.
to sitting next to each other talking over something. I love that image. So that's a good one. So what
Okay.
else?
Let's see. I would say, I think taking the time after we did like an initial debrief, and then we spent time not speaking and
Mhm.
allowed it to sit. And for both of us, that gave us the opportunity to kind of process what you had said and what I had heard.
Mhm.
And you could process how you felt about seeing it out in the open like that. Like, okay, did I get it all out? Was everything I said correct? Was any of that just emotionally fueled and
Was it
maybe
fair? Do I need to apologize for anything?
right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was really good to hear, because then I can be like, all right, at least in the short run, that's exactly what he's feeling. And I was able to, like I said, process through a lot of things that came up. when I heard that stuff and like what my initial reaction was. And
Mhm.
I mean, I have a reaction sometimes, like an innate response to be like, you know what? I can just cut this off and it's done. And this is not a problem. And not to just like leave him out in the cold, but like
Mhm.
there are I have that initial like just quick like this is just not worth my time. And then I'm like, this person is very much worth my time.
Mm.
This is very much worth me spending some uninterrupted time to
Mhm.
correct this issue and make this better.
Mhm. That felt so validating that in light of everything that was going on, all the stuff that had come up last minute that had made getting together impossible, that you carved out that time, right? And so that to me was key. With another one that comes to mind for me is, again, leading with curiosity. Curiosity is so good to do because it does two things. One, it prevents that other person from being on the defensive immediately. It also gives us the opportunity to recognize in the moment that we may not have all the information.
Mhm.
In fact, there's a good chance we don't have all the information. And even if we did have all the information, we can't necessarily anticipate all the ways that is affecting the other person in their perception of things and the choices they've made for their actions. It leaves things open. To me, what was most important in the conversation was that we figured out where we were, got back on the same page. It was not whether I was right and you were wrong. I was not wanting to hear I was right, you were wrong. In fact, I think I said in the initial conversation,
Mhm.
I don't want to be right about these stories at all. I want there to be more to this, and I don't know what that might be. And so you kind of knew that too. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, because I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
I didn't want you to feel like you were under attack because that's not going to help
Yeah.
anything.
You
Right.
leading with curiosity really made it more comfortable for me to sit in the spot of like, okay, I know it was me that messed up and I know it was me that kind of caused this little thing that we had. And yet you leading with curiosity allowed me to be a little bit more vulnerable and honest, and my defenses were completely down
Mm,
because I'm like, okay, good. He's not going to attack me for this.
no,
So it was
no,
good.
not interested in attacking. And I very rarely am, but when I do get angry in the past, I can get really attacking. And I didn't want to do that,
Mhm.
you know, in part because I don't like I feel when I'm in that mode. And second, why would I want to attack you? You know, there's that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have all those. Any others?
No.
Okay, well, those are just a few,
Mhm.
right? So we have time, we have curiosity, we have sitting side by side versus opposing one another. There's a lot of different elements to this. So if any of this has resonated with any of you and you want to share any of your own experiences, ask any questions about this, have us clarify anything, you can reach out to us anytime at our email address, stayingpowershow@gmail.com. You can also find us on our social media feeds, which are all available in the show notes for this episode, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find all that information at our radio home, the website for 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. And there is more on the way after Ashley goes on vacation, her first one.
Mhm.
She's excited about. She's going to come back wearing a cloak and
I
have a
might. Oh,
wand,
oh,
and
I might.
you
Ooh, I
should. It'd be
should.
kind of fun, and people
Okay.
could see it on the stream. So we will be back next week with another episode of Staying Power, talking about some other way for us to build better lives. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I am JD,
I'm
and we
Ashley.
will see you soon.
Bye.
Yes!